word you use?
Spoilers.
Spoilers. Spoilers. Spoilers. Spoilers. Spoilers. I like that word.
I thought you might.
Hello everyone, and welcome back to Review Who and another episode of Missing Presumed Lost. And today we are going to be going back on a long journey to the Crusade. The Crusade is thus far the 5th historical story we've looked at, and whilst overall it is a good story, it is during this one that you start to realise some of the issues with the purely historical stories that no doubt led to their decline. However, again, as one of the missing stories that I've seen very little of, it is a very entertaining watch. And what makes this story better than some missing episodes is that it is half complete, with only 2 of the 4 episodes missing in its entirety. Back to being a 4-parter, this story stands up well as there is a good mix between action and dialogue. And once again, this story shows us perhaps some of the more rebellious side of the young Doctor's nature when it comes to the rationality of theft.
Having been stolen once, they can be stolen again, or perhaps borrowed, shall we say?
And that he's not against getting physical to protect his companions. However, we also get to see a more peaceable side in which he tries to sue for peace, even though he knows that in the situation it probably won't work. What does unfortunately let this story down is one of the big things that has now started to stand out with the purely historical stories, namely Barbara and the fact that she is always the kidnapped woman/slave who is subjected to the historical attitudes towards women. Now obviously this isn't something that you can really change, after all that is how the attitudes were at the time, but it's in this story that I feel it really starts to stand out more, and also you start to realise how much of a common occurrence this is for Barbara's character. As was commonplace in Doctor Who, many of the actors who appeared in this story had already appeared before or would go on later to reappear again in future stories. However, some of the most notable ones are Jean Marsh, who played Joanna, would later go on to play short-lived companion Sarah Kingdom in the Daleks' Master Plan, and even later Morgaine in Battlefield. And Julian Glover, who played King Richard in this story, would later go on to play Scaroth in City of Death, and whom some people may also recognise from Star Wars, Game of Thrones, and appropriately Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. Interestingly as well, Adrienne Hill, who later went on to play companion Katrina, had also been considered for the role of Joanna, and Nicholas Courtney, who later went on to become the Brigadier, was also considered for the role of King Richard. It has to be said, of all the missing stories there are left to be reanimated or reconstructed, this is one that isn't probably that high on many fans' lists, but personally, I think it's one that we could probably see sooner rather than later. Contrary to some rumours going around a while back, there are no plans for the foreseeable future for the BBC to reanimate, reconstruct and release this episode on DVD. However, with only 2 out of 4 episodes missing, it does mean that there is a lot less to reconstruct and reanimate than some other longer stories should the BBC decide to do so. And it is worth saying as well that as much as I personally am open to having stills reconstructions, I certainly think this is an episode that would benefit from animation. Simply from a perspective that whilst there is plenty of dialogue in the missing episodes, there are also some crucial scenes of action that I think would need to be seen rather than read in the typical subtitles that you would get in a stills reconstruction. In short, I personally think this is definitely a story that deserves an official animated release, and I think it has a very good chance of being released as well. So the Crusade. If you're not bothered about watching the missing episodes, you're not missing that much. However, if you want a good example of why the missing episodes should be reconstructed/animated, then this is a perfect example of why. As an episode of Doctor Who, it might be somewhat lacking in places, and as one of the purely historical stories, there are better ones out there. But yet, there is something about this story that is very endearing. I can't quite put my finger on it, so I will at least say, watch it, and I think you'll understand exactly what I mean. And that brings to a close another Review Who and another Missing Presumed Lost. As always, I hope you enjoyed this video. Like, favourite, subscribe, share, it really helps me out a lot, and be sure to check out the description below for a link to my Patreon. There is an exclusive webcomic and rewards for people who support it, and the funding generated by my Patreon helps me fund future videos. I salute you all, and I will see you in another video very soon.